Dice, yeah, ay, ay.
Good day and welcome. I am William, narrator for the FYI I Am Damaged podcast. What if raising good kids starts less with control and more with creating a soothing presence for honesty, repair, and growth? Oscar talks with Dr. David Marcus, a clinical psychologist and founder of ParentRx.org, who has spent 40 years helping stressed families, high-conflict parents, and kids navigate the messy middle between confusion and understanding. Now, a word from our sponsor. Oscar wrote a wonderful children's book called Logan, The Strong-Minded Little Elephant. He also created a wonderful song for his children's book, which is at the end of this episode. Check it out.
Meet Logan, the strong-minded little elephant who learns that bravery isn't about being fearless. It's about believing in yourself even when you're scared. In this beautifully illustrated story, friends follow Logan through a colorful jungle as he learns to calm his worries, take deep breaths, and remind himself, I am strong, I am safe, I can do this. It's a story that helps kids, and maybe a few grown-ups too, find courage, mindfulness, and strength in their hearts. Logan, the Strong-Minded Little Elephant by me, Oscar Luna. Available now at all major retailers and my publisher's bookstore, Milton and Hugo. Because it's up to every parent to show that their child deserves to know that strength starts from within.
Hey, thank you for joining me on another episode of FYI I Am Damaged. I'm joined by Dr. David Marcus, clinical psychologist, founder of ParentRx.org. How are you doing, Dr. Marcus?
I'm fine. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, Oscar.
You're welcome. And, well, let's try with a nice little warm opening. When parents meet you for the first time and only known you as the parenting psychologist, how do you like to introduce who you are and what you actually do for families under stress?
Sure. If I'm talking to new parents, there's a couple of things I have to stay aware of. I mean, I've been doing this for 40 years and everybody makes their mistakes and you learn from them. The first thing I got to be careful of is this. Parents don't come to a child psychologist or a family psychologist first. They go to their friends, their family, they look for advice. Something's going on with their children or with their relationship with their partner. And they try those things and they haven't worked. And so they hit my door kind of thing, and they, so one of the things I'm aware of is they're going to tell me what's going on, and I'm going to tell you how I introduce that. But I have to be aware that this is not the beginning of their search, And I think they're afraid that Dr. Marcus, because I've got a title, doctor, he's going to turn to them when they tell me what's going on with themselves or their children. And he's going to go, oh, that's bad. And of course I don't do that, because, that's what they're kind of afraid of, And so the phrase I use is, they explain what's going on with themselves, their children, and say, well, we're going to tweak your parenting skills. We're going to go on a mutual exploration and take a look at what's going on. The mutual part is to give them some sense of empowerment, to tell you the truth. You're not alone in this. We're going to do this. It's called a merger experience. And, this is a safe place to go into these things, all in that one word, mutual. All right. Again, I've had to give this a lot of thought, Oscar, because, again,
Understood.
And so we're going to go through an exploration, of how these things came about, what's their history, and then the things that you don't understand, we're going to figure out what those are, and then we're going to figure those out, and when we do, we're going to figure out what to do about it. All right? And this relaxes the parents that I see. Hey, this guy's okay. He's not going to point a finger at me. We're going to do this together. The merge is very important to have with parents. By the way, I never see children without seeing their parents. And that's something your audience needs to understand, because I realize, after all these years of practice, of course, but even earlier, that I am not the agent of change here. I mean, I may see them and their children once every week or 2 weeks, whatever it might be. And, that's it. I can't make all the changes in the system at home just by talking to me. And I tell parents, they're the agent of change. It's my job to tweak your skills. And, if we see the frequency and the intensity of the reactions that you're seeing that are disturbing diminish, then we're succeeding, you see. So this is what it is. You know what I mean? This is how we approach it. All right. I tell them, look, I'm temporary. And the idea of coming to see me is that you see me for a while, you practice the skills that we're talking about. I'll explain the concepts of these, skills that you're doing, try them out, see if they help, and once they help, get rid of me. The idea of coming to see me is to get rid of me, And so this gives it a framework, basically, for the parents, all right? So, and they feel empowered, I'm not just going to see your child and, have the magic wand and make them behave. It's not going to happen that way. It's just not. So from there, I have to study a number of things. Okay. First, I go into have the parents, of course, tell me why they're coming to see me. That's obvious. But over the years, I've changed that question, Oscar. I changed it to, why are you coming to see me at this particular time? Because there's always timing involved when somebody comes to a resource like myself,
Right.
And as I said earlier, they tried everything they know. Sometimes they're pulling their hair out because it's not doing what they needed to do. And so please help me, Dr. Marcus, but don't tell me I'm messing up, that type of thing. It's a balance that we have to go through. I have to join with them. I have to make my office a safe place, not only for them, but for their children. Okay. So here's something that's important. When people tell me what's going on, especially about themselves, but even about their children, they always hit a point where they say, I don't understand why I feel this way, but I do. Or I know I should be doing this. I've gotten all the information, but somehow I can't. Or another one is very obvious is, does that sound normal to you? And the reason for this is they don't have the explanation for what's going on, either with their children or with themselves. All right. So I make note. I have a little portable keyboard, and I'm a pretty good typist. I don't have to look at the screen. I think that's intrusive when I'm sitting there talking to somebody. So I'm clacking away on my little keyboard, looking at them. And I make note of where those things happen, because that's where we need to go. A very wise supervisor I had in graduate school, Dr. Houghton, I remember he was the head of the clinic. I was in Louisville where I was in school. Once turned to me, your audience might laugh at this, but it's true. He says, David, what is psychotherapy? Thanks a lot, Dr. Houghton. I'm a third-year student. He's the big shot. He runs the clinic. So I go into the blather about, we're trying to help people, blah, 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 and he just shakes his head like, no. I said, okay, I give up, Dr. Houghton. What's psychotherapy? He says, there's one thing that explains it. Psychotherapy begins where the words run out. That's where I'm going. You see I don't understand this. I don't know why. Is this normal? You see?
And then they see you, yeah.
We've tried to find them. And once we understand what's going on, when they can put words to it, then we can figure out what to do about it. So this is a process, obviously. It doesn't just start with Dr. Marcus pontificating about thou shalt do this and thou shalt do that, because that's nonsense. I don't know. See, one of the things I really like about what I've been doing for all these years is that it's creative. Everybody's different. Everybody's reasons are different. The things that they don't understand are different. Same thing with the children. I'll tell you what so they tell me these things, and then, I go through this explanation. They feel comforted and soothed. And then one of the things that we should talk about is what I call a soothing presence, but we'll get to that, So I make an appointment to see their children, but I give them an introduction to give to their children. Now, it depends on the age of the child, obviously, but the general gist of it is this. We saw Dr. Marcus. Explanation to the child. We saw Dr. Marcus. He's a special doctor who talks to children and teenagers, if they're teenagers, about the things that are important to them. You'll have your special time with Dr. Marcus, and we'll have our special time with Dr. Marcus, parents. And the reason we're going to see him is so that he can help us make things better for you. All right? This is to get away from, you're a problem kid, go see the doctor. Because a child comes in like that, they sit there like this, they're afraid, and I don't blame them. Who is this guy? And I explained to the parents this, and again, I've had to give this a lot of thought because I've seen hundreds of families at this point. I tell them the key word in the explanation is the word important. Because when the child comes in, we will literally make a list of the things that he considers important, she considers important to her, him or her. And, on the top of the list might be, I don't know, his favorite video game, right? But down the list will be mother, father, siblings, school, friends. Friends is usually clear near the top when you're dealing with 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds. So, and this is my entry, I don't want to label anything. I'm not going to sit there and say, well, your parents told me that you were having trouble with this. Tell me about it. I'm not going to do that because that'll put the child on the defense, my parents think I'm bad, that type of thing. I want this to be a safe place for the child to be able to express themselves. So I said, okay, if he starts with, his favorite video game, I'll say, oh, well, tell me about this game. And I've heard, and the idea is just to make them comfortable, and so they tell me, they explain these games, and I'll be very honest with you, Oscar, I don't understand a word they're talking about. I really don't. You have children, they play these games. I used to try to play with my son when he was younger. He'd be clicking away on these things. I died during the credits. I was so bad at these games. But anyway, tell me about it. This monster here and that ogre there. Okay, wow, that's really cool. Yeah. But then it takes a couple of 3 sessions to get past, But then they get, okay, tell me why your mother is important. Now, the neat thing about the word important is that it doesn't define anything. I want the child to define it, Mom can be important because she's really cool. She spends a lot of time with me. I really love her. Or mom can be important because she, yells at me and makes me go to my room for hours at a time. You know what I mean? But this is my way of getting access to this material without labeling anything a problem. The child's coming to a doctor. Doctor is scary. You know what I mean? Why am I going to a doctor? You know what I mean? I need to make it really comfortable. And we'll go down the list. What makes your brother important? Why soccer is important to you. What makes soccer important? I'm trying to get them to use an emotional language. Okay. And then I'll use that language with them. That's the common part of the common emotional language. With little children, 3, 4, they don't have much emotional language, so you have to develop it, And I'll start with, okay, when your brother yelled at you, and I have the faces, sad, happy, mad, and left. Point to the face. Mad, that's the mad face. Okay. This man, this man, this man, or this man, or this man. It's amazing. Young children can touch their hands behind their back. If you and I tried to do that, we'd break our scapula, But, I said, can you give me a word for it? And I've gotten some great ones. One 9-year-old boy said, it makes me volcano mad. And after that, and I said, okay, what makes you just a little mad? Well, when my mom makes me eat my peas. So from then on, when he told me about something that was making him mad, was that a volcano mad or eat your peas mad? You see? And they really relate to that because it's based on their experience. See, parents, they always figure this. Oh, I know what anger is. And I went through this, and just do this, and you'll be happy, No,
Yeah.
it does not.
They're not the
work.
same person. Yeah, they're not the same person.
The idea is to get the child to express it. When it's inside, it's very intense. To get it out in what I call a soothing presence, which in its simplest form is basically this: a person who's okay when we're not okay. If you think about the people, Oscar, that you may turn to, hopefully your wife, my wife, that, when we're feeling something intense, invariably we pick people who are okay when we're not, right? Certain people we pick. I mean, some people wear their heart on their sleeve, but most of us pick certain people, and invariably they are okay when we're not. With children, this is very important because they experience things very intensely and they don't have the language to express it. So they express it behaviorally. That's what a tantrum is. A child goes, oh, what I mean? That's the language they have because they haven't developed one. I'll give you another little anecdote if that's okay with you.
Of
Maybe
course.
your audience would. Okay, thank you. I was seeing two brothers, 7 and 9. I just saw them and I was talking to their mom and they were in my waiting room right outside the door. Just for, catch up for a few minutes. And we hear a scuffle. Okay. And then we hear, ow! Okay. We both get up. We went out the door. The 9-year-old's holding his arm like this, with tears in his eyes. The 7-year-old's looking like this. He's really scared. He messed up. So I'm observing this because I'm a psychologist. I observe everything. And I sit there and go, she goes, what happened? And the 9-year-old goes, says, he bit me. And he picks up his shirt like this, and he's got teeth marks. I mean, his brother really bit him. Now, I'm feeling really bad for the mom. She is in this child psychologist's office, and her kids are biting one another. She was mortified. And she turned to the 7-year-old and said, I told you to use your words. How many times have you heard that phrase, right? I told you to use your words. And the 7-year-old just looked at her in all innocence and said, I don't know how. And I said, Mom, that's where we need to go. The more words, the less behavior. Now, let's face it, this is a very important part of development because a tantrum in a 5-year-old we expect and we control it, blah, blah, blah. And over the course of time, and emotional language, you start using your words to deal with your emotions. You don't act out on them anymore. Well, if you don't develop that, if you don't have the opportunity, and it usually comes through the parents knowing what they're doing, that's where I tweak things, if they don't develop it, let's face it, a 5-year-old tantrum is not the big deal. A tantrum in a 17-year-old can be jail time. I mean, this is important stuff, And so I teach parents, I educate them. This is what you're trying to do. You're trying to help the child to get the intense emotions that they have in there out here in your soothing presence. And how you do that is a skill. And I'm your coach. Mm-hmm. And then you need practice. But go ahead.
And working off of that, what was the point that led you to say, like, this is what I want to do? This parent-child communication this is where my focus lies.
Well, I'll get a little personal here because I did not have a soothing presence growing up. All right.
Same here.
Okay, and you can relate. My father was always working or out of the house, and my mother, she just was there. I don't want to go too far into it, but I felt like I was all alone. So I went into psychology. I began to realize what drew me was I wanted to make sure the children that I'm seeing and their families get what I didn't get. All right. And I thought about it, and that's where I came up with this concept of soothing presence. We can talk about being filled up and emptying out, which is what's necessary. And And then I became an advocate for children who were really being abused or neglected in the court system. All right, custody things and parent alienation, all these things that, to be an advocate for children. And that's my calling. That's been my calling. Oh, I used to write children's songs for way back when in college and stuff like that. I play music. Do you play music, by the way?
No, I don't, but I actually, in homage to my younger son, I released a children's book called
Did you?
yeah, Logan the Strong-Minded Little Elephant. So yeah, it's
That's nice. That's cool.
He was born in March of 2020, right when the pandemic exploded, and he was a preemie. Yeah, and we thought he was just gonna have developmental issues growing up, and man, this kid is like a little rocket now, and
Good for you.
he's gonna have his 6th birthday, and
Good for you. That's great.
yeah, I love all 3 kids, and they all have their different, distinct personalities, and just to
Sure.
touch on a lot of things you said, like really I really resonated with, especially like with the soothing space, soothing presence. Um, I always make sure like it was just like a switch in me. Basically, when there'll be like, let's say 2 different examples. One is okay, they don't put down I actually reverse that now because they're older. I said, okay, there's only one woman in this house. We have 2.5 baths. The bathroom that we all use, we don't invade my wife's bathroom. And we just say, I told them, I said, you know what? Every place else, put the seat down. Here, leave it up. Less of a hassle.
Yeah.
And before I was able to work on self-regulating myself, that would get me upset. Who left the seat up, who's not, cleaning up after themselves. But then when we would deal with let's say, a larger issue, I would be completely different. So if it was like a life-changing issue, like if they were getting bullied in school or something else happened, or we just discovered something that we needed to kind of stop it and address it with them, I would take a different tone to it. And when I
Good for
started
you.
reading about the soothing presence and the way you were explaining it, I'm like, and then my wife would be like, okay, you yell at them for leaving the garbage around or leaving the seat up or down. But then when we're at a very point in time where we're sitting with them, like trying to figure out the situation, she's like, you're totally different. You're totally different. I'm locked in. I made sure that I don't raise my voice. And I'm like, what happened? Explain this to me. Like, where are we going with this? What was the thought process and all that?
Good. Good.
And she asked me, and I said, you know what? Because I may get upset at the small stuff, but the big stuff, they don't need me ranting and raving or being judgmental of them to not get a response from that conversation. Have I could be a little bit better? Of course, anybody can. I'm past
We're
the
human
judgment
beings.
part. Exactly. Like how you brought it
Mhm.
up about how like my wife, she gets a little bit upset or she gets a little bit self negative contemplating in a sense, if that makes any sense. But like when she would
Mm,
take them to the doctor, to the dentist, and they would check them and everything. Well, you got to make sure they're brushing it, and she'll get very self conscious, like, oh, they're judging me, and I'm like,
okay.
who cares? We're doing like that old phrase. We're doing the best we can with what we have, and we've been doing that, and we've been improving by leaps and bounds. It's that little judgment factor from other people. Me, I don't, I could care less. So I'm
We
yes.
when I'm just going to respond to why your wife might be getting upset and you're not, which is actually a good thing because the things that upset you, she can soothe. The things that upset you, she can soothe. Because you're different. What we do in situations like that. There's uncertainty involved. Are the kid's teeth going to be okay? Whatever it might be. And what do we as human beings don't like uncertainty because it doesn't let us really adjust. So what do we do to try to give ourselves certainty? We project onto the situation. And what we typically, from similar situations in the past, but typically we project one of two things: our greatest hopes or our worst fears. The only real answer to that is data, is actual information. Now you can soothe her and you can say, something makes you like this. I'll give you, are you in the mood for anecdotes, or are we taking too much time with anecdotes? It's up to you.
Be the Dr. David Marcus you are. I don't want to
Okay.
hold you back from how you are, how you speak, or anything like that. Please give me all that you are.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to go into this long anecdote because I want to get to stuff that would really help your audience as much as possible. Okay, Oscar?
Okay.
I want to explain the concept of being filled up and emptying out, because this is what you're trying to do when you take this calm, soothing approach. All right? That's the first step. So I give you credit. I really, really do. Because some
Thank
people
you.
go, and that doesn't help at all. Okay. This is how I explain it to parents. We have an emotional space within us. It's not a real space. It's a psychological space. And typically, you see what I'm doing. I'm patting my chest. We think of our heart when we think about emotions, but they're in our head. We like to think of ourselves as nice, logical people. A leads to B, leads to C, leads to D. But most of the associations in our mind are actually emotional. Okay, that's where sort of the chaos comes in. But okay, that's the way it is. What I explain to people is, okay, this space can get filled up. And what fills it up is what's obvious: intense emotion, anger, fear, apprehension, anxiety. You pick it. Sadness. In fact, in little children, you give them this little toy and they get real gleeful. That's very intense for them, And so it's the intensity of the emotion. And what happens is, this is the important part, what happens when we get filled up? Well, first of all, we know when we get filled up because we have phrases that describe it. I've had it up to here. The straw that broke the camel's back. Lots of phrases, So what is it? We feel it inside. It's intense. It's uncomfortable. It's discombobulating. Sometimes it's scary because we don't really understand why we're feeling so intensely. All right. And so in fact, that's the phenomenon of overreacting, to tell you the truth, but we'll get into that.
Okay.
So what do we do as human beings? We focus inwardly on how we're feeling and try to do something about it. We may get it off our chest with a soothing presence, for instance, or we can journal, or we can go for a run, watch TV and divert ourselves from it, things, whatever, You pick your own way of dealing with it, But the point is this: when we're so filled up with an intense emotion, we're focused inwardly. So, by definition, we are not focused outwardly. Which means somebody can sit you down when you're really upset and say, hey, give a nice logical explanation for, hey, this is what happened, and it's not so bad, and just do this, and you'll feel all better. And they don't hear it. They don't hear it. They'll hear that 5% of what you say that somehow supports how they're feeling. They get angrier, perhaps, or their tone of voice that somehow it implies that. And the person who's trying to be logical, I don't get this. And finally they say, I can't talk to you. It's like talking to a wall. And that becomes part of the history that gets in the way of communication. It's obvious, okay? The phrase I use, maybe you've heard this phrase before, a blinding rage. You ever hear that phrase? A blinding rage.
Yes.
Okay. That's pretty accurate. When somebody is so filled up with anger, they're pretty much blind to everything going on around them. So obviously the answer to that is emptying them out so they can even hear you. Now, this is true with children, but with young children, you have to actually develop this capacity. Okay, and that's another can of worms in the future. But okay, that's something that I help parents to help their children to develop over the years. But assuming we're talking about adults right now or something, emptying it out is not the same as catharsis. It's not like we're just sitting there going, free association, just talk, the psychoanalysis. No.
Mm.
And as a quick aside, you know that Freud, who invented psychoanalysis, never thought it was going to cure anything. Yeah, he just was. Free association was simply his way of trying to study the mind. It was his acolytes who came later who said, "Oh, this is curative." No, okay, he never thought that way. It's just kind of an interesting historical fact about psychology. But anyway, emptying out, that's a skill. The first thing you need is to be a soothing presence. Now, why do I say presence rather than soothing person? Because it's very hard to be a soothing person if your environment doesn't support it. Again, we're human beings. And if you're going through job stress and you got a deadline tomorrow and your kids are all of a sudden, fighting or something like this, you're in no, way, shape, or form ready to be a soothing presence. I talk to people about lifestyle. I talk to people about predictable time with their children when they're not preoccupied. In this day and age with computers and cell phones, it's not like you leave your work at the office anymore. You know what I mean? And so it makes it very difficult to be a soothing presence in modern times. And I have to talk to people about lifestyle changes. Your children need predictable time with you, not just when you happen to be not busy thinking about this or that or the other. It's way easier said than done. All right. But it's very necessary. Children need to be attended to, all right, in order to develop what we're talking about. If you're a soothing presence for them and you can help them to empty out, which I'll explain more in a minute, they take that in. It's called internalization. They'll take that in, and they'll learn to soothe themselves. In children, that's called resilience. In adults, stress tolerance. This is a very important part of maturation. And you can see how being a soothing presence is. Children can internalize other things that are much less desirable. Children internalize how to react to stress from their parents. So if their parents freak out when, stress happens or they get angry and they yell and scream, the children will take that in. This explains why children who are abused, when they grow up, they will swear up, down, and sideways that they would never do to their children what happened to them. But in moments of unanticipated stress, hits you like in the back of that. Children are great at that, by the way, right? All of a sudden, everything blows up.
Yeah.
We regress back to these internalized responses, and they'll hit. They'll regret it once they calm down and get over the regression, but now it's passed on. See? So this is something I talk to people about a lot. I talk to parents about how do they react to stress, where do they regress to, and why, all right? Because that's also the beginning of helping them to communicate more effectively, when they understand that. Anyway, emptying out. I'm trying to give you as much as I can in the time we have. I hope that's okay.
No, and honestly, we don't, I'll cut this off, but it's, we're not, unless you're okay with it, we're not relegated to the 7 to 8 o'clock. We're not relegated to an hour. If it goes a little longer, then, we don't have to compress this at all. I'm okay with it if you are.
I'm okay. I'm okay with it. It's just that when I've done other podcasts, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, good. When I've done other podcasts, some of them have very strict time frames, and I try to obey the time frame.
I mean, I have my questions, and I am looking forward to asking something. I have a lot of the things with the soothing presence and the emptying out, but as you get to it, there's no need for me to ask it. I'm trying to stay as fluid and not to. And I tell that to my guests is like I don't like to put anybody into any sort of rigidity to say, okay, we need to go 1, 2, 3, but it's okay. I'm good with your flow. You are very opening and welcoming and stuff like that. And I love it. I'm actually sitting here like taking it all in because, And getting back to it, it's like all that you said, like I feel like I'm doing the same thing. I'm backtracking with how I was before I started healing as a person and how I approach my kids now than how I used to before. And then I'm like, oh crap. I'm like, they're acting this way. One is internalizing and retreating, the other one is acting out. And it's to see all of that while learning from professionals such as yourself and all the guests that I speak to. And you can even ask my wife. She would tell you, she's like, you handle things very different now. Very different. And
I give you credit. I do.
the most amazing thing what you said is because I feel like because of what I've been through with my traumas and being on my journey of healing, is that I unknowingly, when I read this thing, I said, crap, I'm like, I'm that. I am the soothing presence to other adults that I speak to, and they open up and speak with me because they feel safety in me and that, oh, I can talk to you, I can open up. And there was a point in time where it's just me and this guy. He was talking about his relationship with his girlfriend, and we were drinking, got drunk, and I'm listening to him, giving him advice. And then I'm like, oh, my drink's finished. I'm going to go get something. He goes, no, you stay there. I'll get you a drink. I'll be right back. And then we just kept talking. And I'm like, oh, wow, and
You're being a good friend. Yeah.
exactly. And they find that safety in me, but then that's where the ugly part of me rears its head when I still need to, and I have my therapist and I'm trying to come up to that point, is that I get how you described when I feel like I don't have anyone who cares for me as much as I would to them. So it's that caring. And then it's like damn near not anytime soon, but it's like almost like off the rails. Like, okay, you don't care? All right, that's it. If you're not gonna care, trust me, I can do that times 1,000. And realizing that, understanding that, and what was told to me is be more self-aware and more of your emotions to say, okay, like how you said, who's showing up at that moment? Which part of my life is showing up, and how were they affected by whatever the situation may be that put me into this reactionary mode?
Right. Reaction versus response. That's exactly what you're talking about. Let me get let me get let me get into this emptying out thing, all right, for your
All right.
audience. All right. But I do give you credit, for
Thank
you're
you.
ahead of me on some of these things, and that's great. Um, emptying out. It's different than catharsis. Like I said, it's not just rambling on whatever comes to mind.
Hmm.
There are 3 levels of emotional intensity that need to be emptied out. This is the newer stuff that it's in my book, Parent RX, along with the soothing presence, of course. Um, the most superficial level is the here and now. This is the logical level, and I use a simple example when I explain this. The garbage needs to be taken out. We have lots of words to describe logically why the garbage needs to be taken out. It's your job. The garbage mess coming tomorrow. It's beginning to smell bad. We have all kinds of. That's easy. The next deeper level is the history level. This is the 6th time I've asked you to take out the garbage, and you haven't done it. Now, obviously, the asking here is going to be more intense, right? But if you were a stranger looking in who didn't know the history, you go, what are you getting so upset? So they didn't take out the garbage. The logic begins to break down. See?
Mm.
The deepest level is what I call the tapped into level. These are just my own terms, lack of better terms, to tell you the truth. Tapped into level. The fact that I asked you to take out the garbage 6 times and you didn't do it means you don't listen to me. I hate when people don't listen to me. My brother would pick on me, and I'd go tell my mom and dad. They didn't care. They didn't listen to me, and they always believed him. This one can go anywhere, okay? Most of the emotional intensity comes from the history and the tapped into level. So everybody tries to be logical, you know? The assumption, if I just give the right explanation, they'll feel all better. Well, I got news for you. Have you ever seen that when somebody feels really intense about something and you give an explanation, they go, "Oh, yeah, I see now. It's all better."
Mhm.
You know what that's called? An epiphany. How many epiphanies do we have in life? Not too many. You know what I mean? So it doesn't work that way. It just doesn't. And that's the silent assumption that people make when they stay so logical. I tell people when they come to see me to put your logical cap on my little glass table over here because emotions have their own logic, but it's not our logic. Okay. So we have ways of emptying these. The first level is easy, because that's the logical level. The history level, when somebody's emptying out on that level, when they say things like, you always do that, or you never do that. Now they're referring to previous events, and you go, oh, really? Maybe I have. Tell me about that. See? The deepest level, oh, when you do that, it just makes me so mad. Well, tell me about being mad about it. Have you felt that way before? You see, you're getting into this stuff. Or people just volunteer it sometimes, you don't even have to explore it. The job of the soothing presence at that point is to listen and mirror. I'm sure you heard the term mirroring before, but in my definition of it, it's an exact mirror. You don't sum up. You don't put in your own 2 cents. You repeat back their language. So they know that you're listening. I hear it's this and this and this. And when I do it, it's that and that and that. And at the end, not only do they feel listened to, they're emptied out because they've taken it from in here to out here in your soothing presence because you're okay with it, right? And you say, is that it? And you say, yeah, that's it. Okay. Then you honor the perception. This is the process, okay? What do I mean by that? Based on how you see it, no wonder you feel the way you do. Now, notice the qualifier because it's very important. Based on how you see it, because you may see it totally different. In other words, you're not just saying because you have these intense emotions, just do whatever you want, because that's not life, Based on how you see it, no wonder you feel the way you do. That is showing what we call commonly respect. When somebody feels truly understood, and their perception is honored, they feel respected. Now, notice I didn't say agreed with, because I'm sure there are people that you and I know that we don't agree with, but we still respect them. You see what I'm saying? So that I'm giving a different definition of respect. Not only, okay, now, next phrase is this. I'm very specific with these things, Oscar. My problem is this. My problem is this. When you hit your brother, it's my job as your parent to make sure all of you are safe. So what can we do? There's another merger to make sure that I don't have to give you these consequences again, to make sure this doesn't happen again. That's the teaching part. We're very close to the topic of discipline here, but it's different. It's a little different, but okay. But this is the process of emptying out. And it's the beginning of discipline as well, is what I'm saying. All right. Those three areas of emotional intensity have to be emptied out, or the person's not in the position to hear you. I mean, one of the worst things you can say is, well, you should do this and should do that. Oh, yeah? Or you should, who are really terrible with this? This is funny. Attorneys.
Oh, yeah.
Attorneys. Attorneys, I see them, that's family. Then I can't use them as an attorney, of course, but okay. Dad, I feel this way. Well, tell me why. What's happened? Oh, wait a minute. You shouldn't have felt that way that time. Therefore, you shouldn't have felt that way at that time either. Therefore, you shouldn't feel that way.
It's so over analytical. I was a
I still
paralegal.
feel that way.
I was a paralegal for 13 years, so I was around
Oh,
that and how they dealt with
okay.
their clients and seeing that, and they walk out of their office and go, "You see this? You see this?" And I was thinking about it now. It's like the perception and the the want to just impose how maybe how smart you are or how analytical you are, and thinking that's going to solve it. I've won cases like this. I can fix your little problem.
Well, it works in court, but
Hmm.
not in a family. You know, it doesn't. And I've faced attorneys like that who just they're pretty full of themselves. And I've done a lot of testifying over custody, blah blah blah. Like I told you, and the first couple of times I did it, I was kind of scared. You know what I mean? Like, and after the first couple of times, I realized I knew a whole lot more about what I'm talking about than they do. And so, and the judges love that because they're hearing two sides and totally different. You know what I mean? And Dr. Marcus or somebody like me comes in and says, "Oh wait, I talk to these people, this is what they said, this is what's going on. Ergo, this is what the judge can decide," and they love it. In fact, they defend me when somebody tries to attack me. They say, "Just let Dr. Marcus speak, will you?" That type of thing. And but I run into these egos, and again, attorneys have a different. People come to attorneys and things are chaotic. They don't know what to do. Going through a divorce or whatever it might be. So there's a purpose to it. Attorneys putting glue into the chaos. This is what you can expect. This is what we can do. That's a good thing. You know, it's just that you need to take into account the human factor too. You know, and so people are comforted by that. But then they also come to people like me. I get referrals from these attorneys and say, "Hey, can you help these people who are going through a hard time?" Those are the good attorneys. You know, I have my own scale for attorneys. I've dealt with so many of them.
Same here. Same here.
Okay, you probably know better than I do to tell you the truth. You are a paralegal. Uh,
Well, let
anyway,
me
yeah,
let me touch on something. I mean, you tailor strategies from early childhood through adolescence. What is the one thing parents get wrong about little kids' emotions, and one thing they get wrong about teens' emotions?
okay. That's a good question, actually. It's very different.
Thank you.
I began to talk about with young children, you have to actually develop common emotional language with them. If you do not, the child will, the intensity will stay inside them and they'll act out, right? Now, children, parents need to understand that. I'll stay with the young children for a second if I can. We use terms like misbehave, act up, act out, use them synonymously, but the term really is act out. And young children are usually acting out one of two primary things, and then there's a secondary thing. The primary thing, one of them is very obvious. They're acting out an intense emotion. That one's easy to see, right? They're throwing a temper tantrum or whatever. The second one's a lot more subtle. They're acting out an emotional need that's become intense because the need has not been met. I'm talking about the need to be attended to. Now, notice I'm not using the term attention. I do that on purpose, Oscar, because the word attention connotes negative attention. All right. Now, in order to be a soothing presence, you've got to be in attendance. To help children develop self-esteem, you have to attend to them. To help them internalize a soothing presence, you've got to attend to them. This doesn't just happen because they're there, you know. So attending to a child is much different than just, and the ironic part is negative attention. Strict behaviorists will tell you this. Child seeking attention like that, why are they getting so obnoxious, let's say, trying to get your attention? Because a need is different than a want. You may want, say, a new van. You've got 3 boys. I imagine you have a van, You may want a new one, right? But gee, I don't have the money right now, so I'll get the old one for a going for another year. That's something you want. Something you need is much more basic: air, food, and water. All right. Now, what happens to the need for air if you don't have air for 3 minutes, or food for 2 days? What happens?
Yeah.
They intensify.
Mhm.
In fact, they'll intensify till all you can think about is getting that next breath of air or that next glass of water. The point I'm trying to make is that emotional needs are the same way. When they're
Mm.
not met, they intensify. And this is where the acting out behavior, they can't get you to attend to them by simply asking or doing what, they'll find a way to get you to attend to them. They'll hit their brother. They'll do whatever it takes to get you to attend to them. And here's the ironic part, like I was getting at. Behaviorists will tell you that you bad behavior, give a negative reinforcer, basically a consequence. So the child, quote unquote, learns their lesson, and you're extinguishing the behavior. Can you see how that's exactly the wrong thing to do here?
Yeah.
Okay, you ignore the behavior or you punish the behavior. The child still needs to be attended to. And all you've done is reinforce, act up even more. That's the only way you're going to get any sort of attention whatsoever. This is one reason I'm not a behaviorist. But anyway, but it doesn't work. Besides, the assumption that the child will, quote unquote, learn their lesson and not do it again is wrong. The child's perception of the parent comes into play there. Dad's just being mean. They're not learning to not do it. They're learning that dad's just mean. You see? With an adolescent, you do that. An adolescent, you've got a couple of them, right? They're going through individuation, which means I got to be me. So you try to pull that stuff on them, they're going to say, my dad's a jerk, and I'm going to show him he can't just run my life. And, you get the opposite. They'll sneak around to do something, you know what I mean? Adolescence is a different can of worms. I'll put it that way. We can
Yeah.
talk about that. But you see, you can't assume that that's the lesson they're going to learn. All right. We're getting very close to the conversation about discipline, because it's different for young children versus adolescents. And this is one of the reasons why, So parents make that assumption, bad assumption. The child just acts up more, so they punish them more. They'll finally learn their lesson. Finally, you lose all credibility, and you're just not a therapeutic parent at all. They're not going to come to you with anything because they're afraid of what you're going to do and how you're going to react.
Yeah.
You lost the battle. Okay. With young children, you may be able to control it, but once they hit those teen years, they'll find their way around anything that you do,
And then
and
the
you
other
lose all credibility.
you do. And if they feel that sort of soothing presence with the other parent, and then I felt that way for a little bit because okay, I wasn't making the approach as a proper parent, and they would go to their mom, and I'm like, it's like I'm smart, I can help figure this out, but I let that part of me push them away because they're not having. I had some weird sense of okay, they should adjust to me, I'm the parent, and when they're a child, they're not going to know that, they're not going to do that, and to force it is to just push it away.
You're right. That's exactly right. That's like what I'm talking about. You're asking about things that get in the way. I have a chapter in my book, Parent RX, just titled, What Gets in the Way? That's the title of the chapter. Let's go through a couple that, okay, parent gets defensive when the child says, I don't like what you did. Oh, yeah, that stops the emptying out process right there because the child now has to defend himself. You see? Make light of it. Try to, with a young child, try to, get them to laugh, sort of, so they don't feel that way. Well, maybe you'll succeed, but you haven't solved anything. And you certainly haven't helped them to develop an emotional language, right? Dads do this a lot. I'm stereotyping, but we are the fixers. So we jump in and say, oh, I get it. Well, I went through it. Just do this and you'll feel all better, right? When a young child, they'll just go, okay, because they're not going to gainsay dad. An older a teenager or an adult, if somebody did that to you, Oscar, you started telling them something and they just said, oh, I went through that, blah, blah, blah. My guess is if it was a good friend, you say, just hear me out. Right? If it wasn't a good friend, you'd say, thank you, and go find a good friend. I mean, we all need a soothing presence, to deal with these things. And so, but with a young child, young children are geared to please their parents, and they don't want to see their parents. They're not going to gainsay. Can you see a 5-year-old saying, "Dad, just shut up and listen to me"? No, they're not going to do that. So you give them the benefit of your wisdom, and they're quiet. So you figure it's all figured out. We've talked about it now. And then 3 days later, something similar happens, and they're just as upset as they were 3 days ago. I thought we talked about this. No, you didn't. You talked at them, and they were quiet. But these are the things that get in the way. And, parents they don't mean badly. I mean, they just want to make the child, quote unquote, feel better. And this is going to sound very radical coming from a family and child psychologist, but I really wish I could get rid of the term make feel better from parent vocabulary, because it doesn't work.
Make feel better. I haven't heard that.
Yeah, it doesn't work. Make them feel better by distracting them. Make them feel better by giving them something to, a toy or something, which is terrible because now they're going to expect a toy. There's all kinds of things to try to make them feel better.
Yeah, it's a Band-Aid.
But it's not. Yeah, but it's not a learning experience.
True. Yes.
You're not teaching them anything about resilience, which goes into stress tolerance later, emotional language, thinking, internalizing a soothing presence. None of that, But your intention is good. It just doesn't work. That's why I don't like that term, because that's how people interpret it. Make feel better. No, what they need, it's not simple stuff. I mean, obviously you can see, but they need a soothing presence, someone who can help them verbalize these things, use your words. That's a skill. That doesn't just happen. I hear a lot, oh, my child is brilliant. They have a great vocabulary. That doesn't mean they have an emotional life. That's a totally other skill. Okay. In fact, families like that, the reason their child's having difficulty is because they've been so praised for their brains. They cerebralize everything. And they never really get in touch with their emotions. And so they're still acting out on them. Or they get depressed because nobody's really listening to them. You see? There's something called the golden child. Have you ever heard of that? The golden child?
No.
This golden child syndrome is this. A child, parents do this, and the child behaves themselves because they're afraid to do anything else, They go through adolescence and they never rebel, which is not a good thing. Adolescents need to individuate, and part of that is they're individuating from you as a parent, okay? How much they rebel is how you deal with them, but they have to do it. If they're always, oh, my son was always a great kid, they go to college and they go nuts. Why? They never had to make a decision. It's always been made for them. They just follow the rules. You see what I mean? And now there's nobody to tell them what to do. I had this wonderful, beautiful young woman, 16, 17, smart, got into college. Within 6 months, she was pregnant and dropped out of school. Hang out with a dope dealer or something like that. She had no judgment because she never developed it. You see?
I've seen that. Yeah, I've seen what you've described. I didn't know they actually put that into context as, that phrase.
Yeah, there's a phrase for it, yeah. There's others. I see children from wealthy families. And why am I seeing them? Because they're depressed. Why? Because they never had to work for anything. Everything was just handed to them. One of the things that I think it's human nature, is we have to aspire to something. We have to have a goal, whatever it may be. These people end up working, some job with the family. They have no real ambition because they don't need it, because everything's given to them anyway. I knew one family, the wedding gift was a A-frame house in the Smokies. I mean, come on, I can't do that. But I started my son on an allowance when he was 5 years old. I wanted him to learn that you got to work for stuff, and it worked, you know. And they're depressed because they don't have anything. They never developed themselves. They never had to.
Yeah.
They never had to struggle with anything. That's part of life, you know. Um, so, you see these, they have some minor job and, they need something, the family buys them, the same family, the girl turned 16, they bought her a custom-made Porsche for her 16th birthday.
Mhm.
She lent it to her boyfriend. His name is actually Biffy, believe it or not. And he wrapped it around a tree. I mean, it's ridiculous, Um, but anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves. The point is still, these are lessons, and this is how they're learned. Children learn from their own experiences, and we help them to process those experiences so they learn from them. When we think about wisdom, we think about somebody who's been there, done that, know what's to do. That comes from processing their experiences. That's how we gain wisdom. Dad tells his 15-year-old, don't go out and drink 10 beers. I did it when I was your age and lit over my head in the toilet. What does the boy do? He goes out and drinks 12 beers and ends up with his head in the toilet. Dad says, I told you so. Why did you do that? You can bet Grandpa told Dad the same thing. We learn from our own experiences, and it's our job as parents to help them learn from their own experience.
Yeah.
When my son was 8 years old, Christmas, all right, true story. Two boys across the street, one a year younger, one a year older, and the family had money, and Mom would go out in September and buy every popular toy there was before they ran out of them. These kids had a $600 Christmas. I mean, it was ridiculous. Okay, my son, one big present, one small one, and he was into Transformers at the time, so I got a Maximus Prime or whatever, and whatever they were at the time. So, and he was happy with them because that's what he wanted. He went over to across the street. Yeah, he came back. How come they have 16 toys and I only got two? Now, I could have given him lecture number 4 about, hey, they're spoiled and blah, blah, blah. No, that was not the proper thing. I said, son, go over there in 3 days and tell me what you observe with them with their toys. So he did. Dad, they don't even play with their toys. They're just hanging out all over the place. They don't even play with them. Do you play with yours? Oh, yeah, I really love mine. See? And that was it. He learned.
Yeah.
He valued what he had because he didn't just get piled on. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I do that to make
That's
sure, like, my children, all my sons get, or at least the two oldest, I always tell them, like, start learning to take the temperature of the room and who you're around and what you see and what they value and everything that you just did. And because I would walk in a room and if I'm not feeling it, they were like, "What's wrong with you?" Nothing. I don't feel like having a discussion about somebody who's not here, saying X, Y, and Z behind their back, or stuff that isn't, I feel, interesting. And
okay.
if I'm not around individuals like that, but then I still do what I can to, I guess I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, just to accommodate those that are around me. And that's okay, at least for me, because say, hey, we're just in a public setting and, talk about, let's see what we could talk about other than stuff that might come off as negative. And I've
Yeah,
gotten I've
okay.
gotten good at that. And I try to tell my kids, I said, hey, look, just you don't have to do something that can be negative towards them or self-deprecating, and you find a way to just learn about somebody, understand them, and it'll go both ways. And if it doesn't, I said, come talk to me. We'll figure it out. Like, what don't you
Yes.
understand?
The it's a psychobabble term for what you're talking about. It's called demand characteristics. That's reading the room. You see the setting and you adjust your behavior accordingly. You go for a job interview. You shave, you put on a jacket, you put on a tie, you're reading the room. This is what it's anticipated. This is what's expected, you know. And there are people, just like you're saying, that they're nice and pleasant, and then as soon as you leave, oh, can you believe this? And you believe that? I don't care for those people. I'm sure you don't either, and you don't want your kids to be like that either. And so, you read the room, you make accommodation because we are social. We are social beings. We have to interact. We have to treat with other people. Now, young children, I'm giving you more psychobabble, but young children before the tweens, they're in a phase that's called pre-concern. They're not really caring about what other people think or feel. They're just interested in stuff. Like when I do a custody evaluation, I'm not going to ask a child, who do you want to live with? Because that'll scare them to death. I might say, where does your friend like to play? Mommy's house or daddy's house? Make it third person so they don't feel like, oh, daddy's house. I said, oh, really? How come? Because dad has a Nintendo. You see, it has nothing to do with whether dad's good or bad or different. It's just, stuff. And they hit the tweens to begin to start going into the phase of concern, where they actually have to treat with people and, and be aware of what they're feeling and how they're impacting on other people, And that's something that comes through exactly what you're trying to do with your sons. All right. Let's be aware, It's not just you, it's us. Friends listen. They don't just, pontificate, like I said earlier. Listening is a skill. We need to learn how to do that. And that's what you're training them. I mean, with this being a soothing presence. And by the way, if you lose it sometimes because you get hit in the back of the head and you get angry and stuff, you can actually go to your boys. They're old enough now and say, I guess it was tough when Dad did this. Is I close? What did you make of what Dad did? And empty him out then. No wonder you feel the way you did. Dad needs to work on some of that stuff. Thanks for letting me know. It's still the same thing. You see what I mean? It's not like you do it, it's death. No. We're human beings. It's going to happen. But you can even do that. You see what I mean? If they feel safe enough to say, yeah, Dad, I really didn't like it. One time my son, being the son of a psychologist, says, he felt I was being unreasonable and he wanted to do something. He said, Dad, I'm going into my adolescent rebellion right now. And I laughed. He's a psychologist kid, And so I laughed and I listened to him. And he had a point. I said, you're right. I was being unreasonable. Thanks for explaining it to me. Most of the time he's no, but okay, that time, but I cracked up. I mean, that was pretty funny, But but he could talk to me is the point,
Yeah. I had a good moment like with my well, it's hard for him to get him to express himself, and we're doing that as he gets older and just learning his
Is this
emotions.
the
And
youngest one?
that's the oldest, actually, because we
Oldest,
were
okay.
we were at a seminar in Valhalla, and it was about to end, and he's like, Dad, he calls us, he's like, I'm gonna step out, I'm gonna go for a walk. I'm like, okay, great. And he calls me later because I don't think he called his mom first. He called me and he's like, I'm scared. I'm like, what's going on? What happened? He's like, well, I'm walking a certain path and we're going through there was a place, maybe you've heard of it, Untermeyer Gardens. Um
I can't say I do, but go ahead.
it's a beautiful place up in Yonkers, and you can walk through the front of it and also exit out the back, and there's a trail there. And he wanted to come back, but he came back too late, so it was closed off. He's like, I don't know where to go. I'm scared. It's the sun is going down. And I go into dad mode, fix it. And I said, okay. I said, you're good, don't worry about it, we don't live in a bad neighborhood. um I understand how it can look because I walked the same spot where I finally figured out where he was. And I said, okay. He's like, I could just sit here and wait for you. I said, yeah, but it's going to get dark. Why do you need to wait? Just start walking. I said, I know where you are. I said, drop a pin. So it shows me where he's at. I said, I know exactly where you are. So you got nothing to worry about. Talk to him very calmly, very reassuring. And I said, go this way. And what I didn't tell him is once he told me he was scared, I looked at my wife. I said, Brandon just called me. I said, everything's okay, but he's scared. I'm leaving and I'll see you later. I'm going to go get him. I'm about 20 minutes away. David, I'm doing 90 on the highway. I'm surprised I didn't get pulled over, and I'm weaving through as safely as possible, but I could have done it a little bit slower. And I said, hey, buddy, I'm like 15 minutes out, 10 minutes out. Where are you? I said, keep walking the path that I showed you, and you'll meet me right there on Broadway in front of the hospital. And as soon as he got there, because I told him, I said, no, move. I said, you got to move. You got to move while there's still daylight. Movement is life. Don't sit there and just wait for hoping that things are going to be okay. They are going to be okay, but I need it. They'll be better if you start doing something about it and talking to them very calmly, sending them voice notes and, being the soothing presence and, okay, sending them voice notes. Okay, buddy, I'm 10 minutes out. Where are you? How's the walking going? How do you feel? Are you scared? Is there anybody around that you don't feel safe around or anything like that? He's like, no, Dad, I'm good. I'm just walking up this hill. I'm going to be at the spot that you told me to go to. And I'm sweating. I'm driving like a
I'm a parent
maniac.
too, believe me.
Yeah. And finally reaching
I
him
know
and
exactly how you feel.
I pulled up right next to him. I'm like, hey, get in. Let's go. Not
Let's go
not
home.
knowing that it's like, if God forbid something bad would have happened, I would have flipped the car like 5 different times. And,
Jeez.
glad it didn't go that way. But just, he couldn't, I didn't want to give that vibe off. Like, you okay? I'm proud of you. You did
Yeah.
great, and all that stuff. So, I'm trying to be more like that. And what I'm
Yeah.
trying to figure out is which, I'm going to take to heart everything you said about the emptying out and with talking with them to I guess like a positive confrontation about what has been done in the past to say, hey, look, I'm not that psycho ranting and raving. I'm your dad. I love you. And I'm just trying to figure out the best way to be here for you while I'm learning you. And I've been doing that more with action than with actually talking to them, but I know I have to find that balance. My wife is good at talking with them about that. I'm more good at showing you I'm starting to change. I want to be a better dad for you because I shouldn't show up to you as the person reacting to all the negative things that may have happened to me.
Um, the, one of the things that by going over this, I'll go right back to it. That word important when I first interview children, I not just young children, I do this with older children too. All right. Because that gives me access to these emotional perceptions. Mom can be great or she can be really mean. They read the room too. If I say this to mom, she's going to get mad or, whatever it might be. So one of the questions, once I have access to this, I tell the parents, this is how you're being perceived and this is how we need to change it so that your child feels safe. And it could be all these wonderful things you try to do, like make them try to feel better and all that. But it's not making it safe for them to do what they need to do, which is empty out and learn from their experience, gain wisdom, resilience, all that stuff we've just been talking about. It's a different process than making a child feel better. What can I tell you? And believe me, I didn't start I learned this stuff from the kids as much as anybody else, to tell you the truth. And so I'm, the reason I wrote the book, which I'm hoping is going to come out within the year, Parent RX, and I should give my website and everything before we stop. But okay, it's because the parents that I was seeing said, Dr. Marcus, please write this down. Please write this down, because they see the results of it, and they say this really made the difference. I get so many, boy, I wish I had you in my ear on Thursday night when I was dealing with my son, things like that. But of course I can't do that. But, the book actually goes parent says, child says, parent says, child, in all these different scenarios, and say, this is what you're accomplishing by using this phrase and doing this and doing that. That's what the parents I was seeing wanted, just give us examples so we can, do this, and that's, so let me give you my information and stop and some.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have people already asking me who I've done podcasts with before, is the book out yet? Is the book out yet? I'm hoping it's going to come out soon. And I'll get back in touch with you and these other people for the very same reason. Of course, there's more we can talk about. But if you want me back, just give me a message and we'll
Absolutely.
schedule it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Where can listeners go to learn more about Parent RX and your work if they want to start doing this amazing exercises and practicing to make themselves have a better relationship with their kids?
I've done quite a number of podcasts now, like 30 of them or something like that, to tell you the truth. All right. And people, the reviews have been really good. Podmatch reviews, I'll give you one, you give me one, all that kind of thing. But they've been really, like you're saying, people are saying, this is good information.
Yes.
This is good information. So there's a lot of positive reviews, and people have asked me to come back because there's so much here, you know what I mean? And the how-tos, I'm giving you the concepts, but the how-tos, that's more, and I can't do it all in the sitting. So people can watch some of these podcasts on my site, which is parentrx.org. Okay. One word, parentrx, like parent prescription, that's what I mean. parentrx.org. And my email address, if they want to consult with me or something like that, they're welcome to do that. It's dsmarcus, dsmarcus, Ph.D, dsmarcus, Ph.D, at parentrx.org.
I'll make sure to have the links available as well in the episode posting to make sure that you're just one click away. Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
you want me to come back? Invite me.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. Thank you for giving me your time, sharing with me your experience and your mission. And this was a very heartfelt episode for me, at least, and I loved it. And you have something here that, as a parent, it's vital. It's vital. That's how I see it.
Thank you. I'm an old man now. This is part of my legacy. Got 40 years of experience. Some people think I know what I'm talking about, that kind of thing. And so I want to share it. I appreciate your comments. This has been very easy for me. It flowed very easily. I appreciate that. You're a good host. You really are. Say hi to your wife and let her soothe you.
Thank you very much. Once she hears this, she's gonna be like, man, I should have just sat in on this episode, or like been one of like an audience member or something. She's getting to love it. And with interviewing all these eclectic people and the different topics, it's been such a journey for me that being already over 60 episodes in, I'm booked up until June. And I love it. I love it. I love it. And I love putting this, what we did just now. I love putting that out to the world. And thank you for all your hard work and everything.
See, you've got a passion. It's great to have a passion, isn't it?
It is. Oh, I love it.
My passion's not this. My passion's music. It is. That's not, my passion is music. I play the guitar, I play the mandolin, I play the banjo, I play Irish music. I've got CDs out, all this kind of stuff. I love it.
I'm starting to learn. I got my own.
You what, guitar?
Yeah, right there.
Let me see.
I don't
Oh, it's an
must-
electric. I can't
Yeah.
see. Okay.
My middle kid, he has an acoustic one, so we got that for him. I said, he's like, you start learning. I said, okay, but I'll get an electric one. So, yeah.
Well, you're talking to a instrument snob.
Mm.
I'm a snob. I've been playing for 40, 50 years, okay? Ever since college, okay? I'm 75 years old. And so over the course, I've learned what to look for. I've got a couple of guitars from the 20s. You ever hear Martin guitars? Have you heard Martin guitars? Look them up.
No. Okay.
Martin is the oldest. Martin guitars are still family owned. They began in 1833. And they are world known for making the best flat top guitars ever. And they had this golden period when they had the right woods, the right craftsmen, everything between the late 20s and the mid 40s. And guitars in that range, some of them go for $500,000. All right. Yeah. I don't own that, but I've got a couple from the 20s that are, they're to die for.
I gotta look into that.
That good.
I'm gonna look into that.
Well, if you want to hear them, on my website at the very bottom, there's a link to some of the tracks from my CD of Irish music that actually won an award. Okay. So if you want to hear the guitar, me sing, me bellow, whatever it is, look at the bottom of parentrx.org, and down there you'll see, oh yeah, let me listen to this stuff. All right.
You
see
got
what
it.
you think. Now, okay. Now, if you don't like it, I don't want to hear that, of course. You realize that.
No negative reinforcement, not from me.
No. I mean, I worked real hard on that CD. I don't want to hear it. Okay. Anyway, it's been a pleasure, Oscar. You take care. I gotta go eat. I'm salivating here, and I'm gonna.
Thank you very much. No, I really appreciate it. And
what's your wife's name?
What's your wife's name? RG.
RG, tell her I say hi. I just saw her briefly. Just tell her I say hi. All right.
Thank you very much, Dr. Marcus. You take care.
You too. Bye.
All right. Bye.
Thank you, Oscar. That was a wonderful episode. If you've ever tried to fix a child without changing the system around them, this conversation is the reset you sorely needed. We talked about why parents are the real agents of change, how children learn wisdom through their own experiences, and why reading the room matters just as much at home as it does in the world. Adelante, siempre por tu mente. Forward, always for your mind. This is the FYI, I Am Damaged podcast.
In a bright green jungle where the tall trees sway, lived a little elephant who felt big fins. Every day Logan loved to splash and play by the river's side, but sometimes wobbly legs made him wanna run and hide. Tummy doing flips like a stormy shaking drum. A tiny voice inside him whispered, what if I can't have fun? Then Brandon the wise monkey smiled from the tree, said, little friend, take a breath, come and sit with me. Feel your feet on the ground, feel your hand on your heart. We're breathing together, that's how courage starts. I am strong, I am safe, I can do this. Breathe it in slow, let it out with a wish. When my mind feels wiggly like a monkey in the trees, I calm my heart down with my breath and my knees. I am strong, I am safe, I can do this. Step by step forward through this, scared and know what if. Even when my tummy feels funny and tight, I can still be brave, I can still shine bright. Next day in the jungle they played a game of tag. Logan felt the nervous pull, his body started to drag, but he remembered Brandon and the tools he had inside. Took a deep gentle breath instead of running off to hide. Breathe in the sunshine, breathe out all the fear. Stomped his big elephant feet and felt his courage appear. With the wiggle of his front cantilap so free, whispered to himself, there's a lion heart in me. His friends saw him smiling as he joined in the game. They asked, Logan, what's your secret? You don't look the same. He said, when my thoughts get lost, I breathe and move my body, and I stand up tall. I am strong, I am safe, I can do this. Breathe it in slow, let it out with a wish from my mind. Be wiggly like a monkey in the trees. I calm my heart down with my breath and my knees. I am strong, I am safe, I can do this step by step forward through the skin and know what is. Even when my tummy feels funny and tight, I can still be brave. I can still shine bright. Little heart listening, this song is for you. It's okay to feel scared, that feeling's true. But just like Logan in the jungle so wide, you've got quiet, steady strength living inside. So breathe in slowly, feel your feet on the floor. Let your shoulders soften, you don't need to. Whisper to yourself when the worries rush through. I am strong, I am safe, and I know what to do. I am strong, I am safe, I can do this. Breathe it in slow, let it out with a wish when my mind feels wiggly like a monkey in the trees. I calm my heart down with my breath and my knees. I am strong, I am safe, I can do this step by step forward through the skin and know what it is. Logan showed the jungle and I show the world. There's a strong-minded hero in every boy and girl in the bright green jungle. When the stars shine above, brave little hearts fall asleep feeling safe.